Now, there was a very, very old gentleman who died. And he got up to St. Peter, and he thought he was going to walk right in, you see, because he was a little bit pompous. So St. Peter said, here, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm come, he said, and I'm going in. He said, you can't go in like that. He said, you've got to make a note of all your sins before you go in. Well, the man said, I haven't committed no sins. Now, he said, that's your first one, pride. Now, he said, I'm going to give you a packet of chalk. And you see that flight of stairs down there? I want you to go down each stair and put a chalk mark on each step for a sin that you remember you've committed down on earth. Oh, the man said, it won't take me very long. So he took his chalk and he started going down this long flight of steps, making a mark on each step. He was amazed how many things that he'd done which were wrong when he started to think back. Well, he was getting very tired going down all these steps, and then there was a turn in the stairs. And he thought, well, I dare say I'm coming to the end now. And as he got down there, he saw one of his former vicars coming up. So he thought, oh, now I must be nearly down the bottom. He's on his way back. So he said, I'm glad to see you, sir, because you know, I must be nearly down the bottom now. He said, no, you're nowhere near the bottom yet. I'm only going back for more chalk. My little granddaughter, she went Sunday school. She'd go every week, only about 4. And the teacher was telling them about Adam and Eve and the story of the garden and trying to let them know how the world was formed. So then she thought, well, I better ask them a question or two to see how much they remember. So she said, now tell me the name of the first man on earth. Every hand went up, Adam. So she thought, well, it shows they were listening. Now she said, what about the name of the first woman? Everybody blank, not a sound. So she said, now come along. Surely you know the name of the first woman. She said, think of the apple. And my little granddaughter said, I know, Granny Smith. They had a bit of trouble in this little village church. A lady came home from America, and she wanted to give something to the church in memory of her forefathers who lived there years ago. And instead of asking the vicar what he wanted, she went out and ordered a very ornate font. Well, it was very beautiful, but see, they had a font in the church already. Well, they couldn't do anything about it. They had to accept it. So the vicar said, well, the one they had was as you came in the church, so they would put this one up in the front near the altar. Well, then this lady and all her friends came for the dedication of the font, see, before they went back to America. So the vicar thought he'd better soak them up a bit. So he said how very kind it was of them to present this beautiful font. He said, we're very lucky in this church now. We've got 2 fonts, one in the front and one in the back. Now, he said, I shall be able to baptize the babies at both ends. I was staying last winter. I was feeling a bit lonely home, so I thought, well, I'll go away and stay with a few friends through the worst of the winter. And we had some bitter weather. And one morning, this boy was out in the road starting his motorbike. Well, he couldn't start it, see, because it'd been out all night and the engine was cold. The noise it was making, he had everybody out of their beds looking through the window, babies crying and all. Well, his language was all can't describe it. Well, the vicar was going down the road with his little dog. And he heard this boy, and he said, well, he couldn't leave it past, you see. So he went across to him, and he said, now, look, young man, I know you're very frustrated. You can't start that bike, and you're waiting to go to work. But that terrible language isn't going to get you anywhere. Now, he said, I want for you to be quiet just for 2 or 3 seconds, and we'll have a word of prayer. Well, he was ever such a nice boy, but he didn't really want a word of prayer 7 o'clock on this bitter morning, you know. Anyway, he stayed put for the vicar. He respected him. And the vicar said 2 or 3 sentences. And that boy pushed the starter on the bike, and the bike went off like a bird. And the vicar watched it go, and he said, well, I'm damned. They'd been very busy in this little village, refurbishing the village hall. And everything was ready, and nearly everything was paid for. And one of the men came into a committee meeting, and he said, look, some people down the road have got a chandelier for sale. Now, do you think we could have it for this hall? You know, they didn't want a lot of money for it and all this. Well, they were arguing about whether or not they should have it. And the chairman got up and he said, well, I don't think we should have it. He said, in fact, I'm dead against it. Because he said if we'd have gotten near, we shouldn't have nobody playing. We've got dear old butcher down Camborne. He's on his own, but he thought perhaps if he could have a help for a couple of hours of a Wednesday afternoon, it would help him a bit with the cleaning up. So he couldn't afford very much, see, so he advertised for a boy for 2 hours, one afternoon a week. £3. Well, 2 or 3 boys came. This first one, he seemed quite nice, so the man said, well, look, I know it isn't much money, but 'tis all I can afford to pay for the time. Boy said, that's all right, it'll be a bit of pocket money for me. He said, I wouldn't sneeze at £3. So the butcher said, well, when are you going to start? Well, he said, I can start right away. I haven't got nothing to do. He said, well, I don't know. I don't know what put you to do. Now I've took you on and all. Can you dress a bird? Well, he said, not on £3 a week. I had my little grandson staying with me, and I was amazed because I wanted to go to a wedding down in the village. Because he was some posh wedding, everybody was going. So he didn't want to go, I don't want to go. I said, well, look, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you a bag of confetti, and you can throw it at the lady when she'd come out the church. Well, he's glad to throw anything, so that made him go. He sat out the end of the road to watch everything, you know. Well, I turned my head away for a minute to look at something, and do you know, as soon as that old bride came in the church with her father to go up to the aisle, my little grandson went out and threw the confetti all over her. That was at the beginning of the service. Poor soul, she didn't expect that. The minister conducted the service. He was a very nice man, but he was telling me that before he left his old circuit, his wife said to him, you really ought to have a new suit. She said, that one is some shabby, and you're going down to meet all these new people, and you'll have reception meetings and all. Well, he meant to, but he was so busy he didn't have time. Well, when he got down to our circuit, he found that one of the stewards was a outfitter, tailor and outfitter. Oh, he thought, that's grand, he'll do a good job for me, maybe a bit cheaper. Well, this man did. He measured him and put the suit on, and the minister said he'd never felt more comfortable in a suit. But do you know, he never mentioned nothing about paying. And the tailor thought, well, I can't go on forever, waiting for this money, minister or no. I'll give him another week, and then I'm going to ask him. Well, nothing was said. So when they were coming out from the service of Sunday night, the minister was shaking hands with them all, and this man thought, now's my chance. So he said, good night, sir. He said, don't you forget, you was naked and I clothed you, you know. And the minister said, yes, and you were a stranger and I took you in. Now, I know there's a lot of people in this audience tonight who are keen WI members, and I am myself. And last week, I went to see one of our committee members. Well, she wasn't home, her husband opened the door. He said, no, Mrs. isn't home. He said, my girl, he said, she's gone out at the WI. Oh, I said, well, that's all right. He said, it isn't all right at all, Miss Rosewarne. He said, to make me miss, she's always out on the WI business. I've no patience with it. I said, you've no patience with the WI? Oh, I said, we to stand for home and country. He said, well, I don't know nothing about the country, but my missus is never home. Now, as I said to you just now, I did go to Methodist chapel, and my friends go to the Anglican church, a lot of them. And you know, years ago, we never had anything to do with each other, did us? They used to go their way and we went ours. Well, I'm very glad to say now we have meetings together, and we're all very good friends, as we ought to be. But many years ago, there was a young curate, and he hadn't had much experience. His first parish. And the vicar went on holiday. And this little chap was in charge of the parish. And after a couple of days, he was asked to conduct a funeral. Well, he went along to see the people, of course. And you know, when he got there, he was horrified. It was a very old person. But they were Methodists. They had Methodist origins. Well, he thought that was terrible to have anything to do with a Methodist. And there was nobody for him to ask anything. So he went home and he rang up the bishop. And he said, could you tell me, Bishop, is it all right for me to bury a Methodist? And the bishop said, yes, go out and bury so many of them as you can find. I met a little man last week, he used to work with me, and he's retired now. So I said to him, how's retirement going? He said, I aren't retired. Oh, I said, I read in the paper you've retired. He said, Mrs. is the one that have retired. She got me up in the mornings making the tea. I'm cleaning the fire. I'm out fetching the papers. I'm doing the vegetables. He said, my dear Miss Rosewarne, I'm just killed. He said, my life is just one long honeydew. Well, I thought he was being a bit romantic. I said, you do mean honeymoon, dear? He said, no, I don't, Miss Rosewarne. I mean honeydew. He said, does honeydew this and honeydew that? Now, it was 3 o'clock in the morning up in this Irish pub, and a Mr. O'Reilly kept this pub. Well, he lifted the phone, and a voice you could tell he was very, very drunk. He said, Mr. O'Reilly, what time do you open? He said, 10 o'clock, Paddy, and dropped the phone down again. 7 o'clock, the phone rang again. Mr. O'Reilly picked it up. It was this same man, sounding more drunk than ever. He said, Mr. O'Reilly, what time did you say you open your pub? He said, 10 o'clock, Paddy. But I'm not going to let you in the state you're in. He said, I don't want to be let in, Mr. O'Reilly, I want to be let out. I was on the bus, I was going Redruth. I don't know what a Camborne woman want to go Redruth for, but still we got to sometimes. And anyway, this lady in front of me, she was rather grand, and she wanted a 20p fare. So she gave the man, the driver, a £5 note. He said, Madam, is this all you got? She said, no, I got £25 down Post Office Savings Bank. This young couple, they rang up the vicar. We got a lot about the vicars tonight, haven't we? They rang up the vicar about having their little baby christened. So, of course, he was very pleased to do it and said he would visit them. So he went down to see them and had a nice chat with the father, and the mother was out. So he said, now, I take it that you are prepared for this big event. Oh, yes, he said, I think so. Missus have made yeast cake and heavy cake and sponges and Russian creams and tarts. Do you think we're all right? Well, the vicar said, that's very nice, but I didn't mean that exactly. He said, are you spiritually prepared? Well, he said, we got 3 bottles of whiskey and 3 bottles of brandy. He said, think that's enough, do we? His wife was a nice little woman, the vicar's wife, I mean. She said one day to a little chap that used to work for them in the garden, she said, you know, I can't help noticing, when my husband is preaching, you don't go to church. But when the curate is preaching, you're always there. Why is that? So he said, well, madam, when the curate to say in conclusion, he to conclude. But when your husband to say lastly, he to last. Now, I'm going to be like that little man. I'm going to conclude the stories, but I must read another one. They be mazed with me up chapel if I don't try another of Mr. Lean's stories, you know. And this one is grand for a Camborne woman, because 'tis the auction sale up Camborne. Comest on, Richard Henry. We'd a call Richard John James Henry for short. Cleanish your boots and comb your hair. Better put on your second best suit. That one is all gaggled over with pea soup. You aren't going school day, you're going up sale with me. I've been wanting a mangle for years, and now there's one up there for sale. Father said I had a look at that mangle. There's more pits and banks in they rollers than was out on our downs. Mother replied, don't suppose he'll cost much to have him fixed up. He went, said Father, cost 5 shillings, now they rollers returned. 5 shillings for returning, I shan't pay it. We'll fetch him when the job is done. Now look us here, Father. Your dinner's enough, and then the boy and me is going to sail. Well, the sail room was packed with people, and scowls of children. But Richard Henry and Mother managed to shove in. Order, please, shouted the auctioneer as he rapped on the table. First, what am I bid for this lovely, overstrung, 7'6" piano? Overstrung, said a man in front. I thought there was something the matter with him. No, my man, there's nothing wrong with it. That refers to its inside. Yes, said the man, that's what the doctor said about our maid Lizzie Ann. She was overstrung. Would somebody like to try it? It's a good piano. Only hymns have ever been played on it on Sundays. Well, up go Joe Muggins, what to play down the little chapel. Loud cheering as Joe sat down, he started to play I Thought I'd See the Pussycat. To have a better effect, he lifted the cover of the piano, and out jumped a mouse. It sprang on Joe's bald head, ran along the table, and up the sleeve of the auctioneer's coat. He quickly grabbed the bottom of his sleeve to keep the mouse from running down again. He said, I got him, but he didn't know what to do with him when he hadn't. And some hot water down your neck, that'll shift him, said Mother. Will somebody help me to take off my coat, asked the poor auctioneer. All the woman said, no, don't leave him go. Look out, there he is, and the mouse was seen looking out over the auctioneer's collar. Just as he gave a great sneeze, the mouse was never seen again from that day to this, and the piano was left unsold. Now here's a lovely chest with a secret drawer that nobody have ever found out how to open. It's said it used to belong to an old miser who died leaving a fortune, but where the fortune is, nobody to know. Hark, can you hear something in it now, the auctioneer said, as he rattled the chest. Mind had another mouse, said Richard Henry. Well, bidding went on till 25 shillings was reached, and it was knocked down to Mrs. Gonninan. Stayed up all night she did looking for the treasure, and all she got out of that chest was 3 penn'orth of firewood. Now Mother couldn't keep her eyes off that mangle, all newly painted, red and green stripes. Well, 'tis looking some handsome, she said to Richard Henry, and if he went work, he looked grand in the front room. After a few odds and ends was sold, 'twas the mangle's turn. How about you, said an auctioneer to a great fat woman up in the front. Will you start the bidding? No, she said. I don't need no mangle. Don't cost me nothing now. I'd go in next door do my mangling. 50 crowns, shouted Mother. Cost that painting, replied the owner. 5 shillings, bid Mrs. Jinks. 6, shouted Mother. 7, bid old Billy Winks. 7 and 6, screamed Mother, and you needn't call my house for no more call Billy Winks. There was no more bids after that, so Mother had the mangle. I got my donkey and cart outside, said Tom Tiddley. I'll get home for ye. Well, it took 3 men and 4 women to get that mangle up in the cart. And when they did, the donkey went lie down. Well, this is some job, said Tom Tiddley, because the last time he went lie down, he was there for 2 days. He'd have been there till now if Camborne Band hadn't come on and played the national anthem. He won't be there no 2 days if I don't know anything about it, said Mother. Hold on a minute, I'm going over here. And she went over to Lizzie's antique shop, and she was back with a couple ounces of pepper. She no sooner started to blaw some of the pepper over the donkey's head when up he jumped. If he sneezed once, he sneezed 40 times, and he bolted up the road. He's a good donkey when he'd get going, said Richard Henry. Yesterday he passed me so fast I didn't see until he was out of sight. Well, they got home. You'll be lucky if you to get any dinner today. Come on, help me get the mangle upstairs. Well, upon that, in come Mother. What do we want putting upstairs for, she said. Well, Father said, I got oil and I left the oil can up there. Now, every wash day in that house is like a fair. All the neighbours to come in. Father, I've got no time go work. Now, that's the end of Camborne auction sale. And I hope you've all enjoyed it. Well, I tell you, I'm just killed. I've been downtown shopping today, and it'll make you some tired, don't it? Little friend overtook me on the way home, and she said, Mrs. Rosewarne, how is it, dear, we to get so tired shopping now? Because she said, I used to dearly love go downtown do a bit shopping, and now by the time we to go around these supermarkets, find what we want, wait quarter an hour, 20 minutes pay our money, said, you haven't got strength to walk home. I said, no, 'tis true, and you see, they don't have no chairs in the shops now, do they? See, when I was young, they had chairs everywhere you could sit down, and they bring the stuff to you. And I think about the draper's shops. If you put your nose in a draper's shop, the man was out with a chair right under it so you shouldn't go away again. And, things used to be marked 1 and 11.3 and 2 and 11.3. Well, we weren't using farthings in they days, but they used to offer you a bit of elastic or a bit of mending silk or a bit of tape or something like that to make up that farthing. And I used to take ages, to decide what I would have. But you don't see no 1 and 11.3s now. This little woman who overtook me, she's a nice little soul. She got a lovely parrot. He come home from Brazil, and he got some handsome colours. He's a picture. And he can talk as plain as we can. And she can leave a message with him if she'd go out. And last week she was expecting the call man. And she wanted to go down post office. So she said to the parrot, when he'd come, tell him I don't want 600 way to call, and the money is in that jug. Well, she went out. Was gone a few minutes. When she came back, the man was in her kitchen taking the money out of the jug. He said, Missus, you got some clever parrot. That parrot had given me a message here so good as you could have done. The parrot said, yes, Missus, and I can count too, and you're 1 bag of coal short on that order. I had a lovely evening last week. Went out with our old folks club to dinner. Well, we had soup. Smelling handsome it was, and steaming hot. But there was a great fly in the middle of mine. Put it off, don't it? One of their blue bottles. So I said to the waiter, excuse me, dear, but there's a great fly in my soup. He said, don't worry now about that, Mrs Rosewarne. He won't drink very much. Well, they brought in the main meal. And I tell you, I thought it was vegetarian. I couldn't see no meat nor no gravy. I thought, well, you've got eaten because there's nothing else here. Well, when the waiter came round for our plates, he said, how did you find your steak, madam? I said, I was lucky, really. I moved a Brussels sprout and there he was. Well, we had a bit of ice cream and cup coffee, and then they said we'd play a few games. Well, the vicar was there. He said, well, first of all, we'd all sit down and see which one of us can make the ugliest face. Well, I never seen such contortions in all my life. And he looked around at everybody, and then he looked at me. He said, well, Mrs Rosewarne, you've won, dear. Oh, I said, I won playing. Well, then they started to play Postman's Knock. Well, I was delighted. And, of course, they played it with numbers. There wouldn't have been much chance for me else, but we had numbers, you see. And eventually my number was called out, and I went out. And some dear little man there was out there. So I said, now, look, dear, you needn't worry, because I've got my kiss-proof lipstick on. He said, Mrs Rosewarne, dear, you've got a kiss-proof face. I'd go out to a lot of these little villages, with these stories. And I was out the other night, and they told me there'd been a lot of excitement in this village because they was going to start up some kind of a nightclub. And there was rumours of all sorts of things. I don't think it was half as bad as they said. But anyway, these 2 teenage boys met, and they were talking about this club. So one said to the other, you been, have you? Yes, he said, I been. But my father didn't want me to go. Father said, I wouldn't go if I was you, my son. You could well see something there you don't expect to see. So the other boy said, well, did you see anything there that you didn't expect to see? He said, yes, I seen my father. Little man down the road, he came home from work. He had some busy day last week. And all he wanted when he got in was to have his supper and put his feet up and watch a bit television. And as he opened the garden gate, his little boy came out running to him, beaming, carrying a letter. Oh, he said, Daddy, I've got wonderful news. I wrote to Jim'll fix it. And I said that I would like to see you fight Joe Bugner. And he said he's fixed up the fight for next Wednesday night. Now, I do like to tell you about my little grandchildren, my little youngest grandson. He was very naughty last week, and his father gave him a beating. Well, after he'd finished, he said to the little boy, now come over here a minute, and you tell me why I had to punish you. Well, the little boy said, that's a fine thing. He said, you beat the living daylights out of me, and now you don't know what you done it for. friend came in to see me last week. He said, I've had some experience. I was driving along our bypass road. And going on, lovely afternoon, no problem, not much traffic or anything, and he was travelling a bit, see? And all of a sudden, something passed his car. And he said, I couldn't understand what it was because it looked like a chicken. And he thought, well, it couldn't possibly be a chicken. Anyhow, he watched it passed his car, passed 2 or 3 other cars, and then eventually it jumped over the edge into a field. Well, he was so interested that he pulled up in the first lay-by, went back and went over in the very same place as this little fowl or whatever it was jumped over. And there was a man working in the field. So he said to him, look, I'm very sorry, but something jumped over in this field just now and went at terrific speed. He said, I thought it looked like a chicken. Well, the man said 'twas a chicken. Well, he said, how in the world could a chicken go at such a rate as that? Well, the man said he got 6 legs. He said, I've never heard of it. Well, the man said, we're 6 of us in our family. And every time we'd have roast chicken, everybody wanted a leg. So I thought if I could breed one with 6 legs, everybody would be happy. Well, the man said, that's wonderful. What do they taste like? Well, the farmer said, I don't know. We haven't been able to catch one yet. A relative of mine, about the same age as me, she was going out in America for a holiday, and of course she bought a few new clothes and that. She wanted to look as well as she could. And then she looked in the mirror. She was trying on this dress, and she looked in the mirror, and she thought, my God, I got some lines in my face. They may not think I look so old as that. I got a good mind to see if I can have my face lifted. Well, she went down to one of our beauty parlors, and she saw the beautician, and she looked at her, and she thought, oh, I suppose I can do something by her. Well, anyway, gave her a proper facelift and made my friend look really nice. Double chin was gone and all. But it was all wasted, because when she gave her the bill, her face dropped again. Now, I live in an area down at Camborne, the Gurry area of Camborne. And today, it's as pleasant and peaceful a place as you'll find anywhere. But many years ago, it was a bit rough down there. And these 2 Gurry men died, and of course got up to the pearly gates. And St. Peter was waiting for them. He said, where have you 2 come from? We come from Gurry. Oh, he said, well, you'll have to wait a minute. We haven't had too many from down there. He said, I got to go in and get my book. Well, when St. Peter came back with his book, the 2 Gurry men were gone, and so were the pearly gates. Now, a little couple I know who lived down near there, they had some new people come to moved in opposite them. Nice couple. Well, the older couple had lived there for years, and this particular morning they were having breakfast. And the older woman, she said to her husband, I don't know what you're like, she said. You aren't a bit demonstrative. That little couple that are come to live opposite, he'd give his wife a hug and a kiss on the step every morning before he go to work. She said, why don't you do that? He said, I don't know the woman. Do you know, I've told you before, I had to spend quite a bit of time up doctor's surgery, because you do save fire and light home. And I went up there last week. I thought it was a miserable old day, gone up surgery a minute or 2. So I went in and I said, Doctor, I'm not sleeping very well. So he said, you're not? He wasn't a bit interested in what I was saying. So I said, I wondered whether you might be able to prescribe a bit of that twilight sleep for me. Well, he said, Mrs Rosewarne, I'm sorry I can't. Because he said that's only for women in labour. Well, I said, don't we Conservatives come in for a little bit of nothing? I met a little man down the street, and he'd go to a chapel where they had a male voice choir concert the night before. And I said to him, did he go concert last night? And he said, no. Oh, I said, mind you, the handsome choir. No, he said, Mrs., I don't call a male voice choir nothing without few women in it. This little woman, she was delighted. Her granddaughter passed her driving test. And she went out for a ride with her in the evening. And they pulled up on the cliffs, and they was watching the people on the beach, lovely June evening. And there was a girl out water skiing, like they do, go on behind this boat, and boat going up and down the bay. And she was having a lovely time. And this old lady watched her for a long time. And she said, well, that little maid is wasting her time. So her granddaughter said, what do you mean, Granny, wasting her time? Well, she said, she's never going to overtake that boat. Now, we don't see a lot of tramps now, do we, like we used to do years ago. But there was a very old tramp, and he was very well known in Cornwall. And he could go to the same houses each time he came down, and they would all give him some money. Well, in his travels, he met a younger man who was just starting. And the little young one wasn't doing much business at all. So he said, now, look, I've been on the road for years. You come with me for a little while, and I'll put you up to a few tricks. Well, this younger boy was delighted. And he hadn't for about a fortnight, and he thought, now it's time for him to start off on his own. So they were going through this village, and they saw the rectory marked up, and he said, well, he can't come to much harm in there. So he said, now look, I want for you to try this place on your own, see how you get on. Well, the man went in, went up the drive, rang the bell. The vicar came out, had an in. Old tramp said, he's struck oil, he's gone in now, I suppose he's having a meal. Well, after a few minutes, out the young tramp came again. So the old one said, well, how did he get on then? What did they give he? He said, give me, they never give me nothing. He said, he got 10p out of me for the church organ fund. Now, I tell you what I got to do a minute. I've been asked to read a couple of readings down our chapel show for Feast Monday. So I want to rehearse one a minute, and I thought, well, I'll do it now. And then I'm going to have it break. This one is called Richard Henry to Celebrate Gull Dies. Now, Richard Henry is one of Mr. Herbert Lean's characters that he's written a lot of stories about. So I'm going to see if I can do it properly. Every man, woman and child for miles around was out in the harvest field. The weather had been hot for days, and the harvest was good. They was out there singing, all is safely gathered in. And the reapers had the sweat still on their brows, and they stood up on a large mound in the field with old farmer in the centre. He had cut the last sheaf. The flowers were tied round him, and as he held them up, he repeated what is known as crying a neck. I have 'em, I have 'em, I have 'em, he shouted. What are they? What are they? What are they? Chanted the workers. A neck, a neck, a neck, he replied. And after this ceremony, the sheaf was taken to the barn and hung over the door, and the last year's sheaf removed. The Gull Dies, or Harvest Home, was to be held that same evening. This was a great event each year, and stories were told of last year's celebrations. All the farmers in the adjoining farms were invited, and their families. The fiddler had been engaged, and roasting and baking had been going on all day, and everything was ready for the feast. The barn where the Gull Dies had been held for generations was swept clean and was whitewashed. Long tables placed the whole length and loaded with a good old Cornish fare. And the labourers with their wives and children were drifting in, all dressed in their Sunday best. Most of the men's suits was smelling of camphor, because they used to use they keep away the moths, because they was only worn on an occasion like this or a funeral. The maidens spent quite a time in dressing, for many a match being made at a Gull Dies. While in come mother and father and Richard Henry. Welcome to ye, shouted the farmer. There's plenty of room up here. Come us up top end of the table, said father, among the bettermost farmers. We shall be served quicker. The great joints of roast beef was brought in steaming hot, and they all sang grace. And the loud talking soon died down. They was being served, and only the cows underneath could be heard as they moved in their stalls. Don't eat much taters, remarked mother, because you'll get plenty of they home. Granny hadn't missed harvest home for 60 years, and she was sitting in an old armchair at one end of the table. She'd been brought in during the afternoon, as she couldn't be moved when the tables was set. "Ah, some pickles, Granny?" asked the man sitting opposite, who noticed she wasn't eating much. "I got one in my mouth now," she said, "and I can't catch 'em because I only got one tooth." "Fill up your glasses, gentlemen. There's another barrel ready to be brought in," shouted the farmer. "Father, that's 4 glasses these had already. You won't be able to dance directly." "I haven't started yet," said father. "'Tis only once a year you'd get a feast like this." Well, at last they all agreed they could not eat any more. So the farmer at the head of the table arose to make his usual speech. He hadn't eaten much on account of helping others, but he'd been drinking all evening, so he had to hold on to the table for support. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen," and sat down again. Well, the crowd understood, and they sang for "He's a Jolly Good Fella." It went so well they sung it over again. Well, the farmer tried to rise again, but he sank slowly under the table. Now, this was a signal for the tables to be put down and the room cleared for dancing and games. They put new candles on the walls, and the fun commenced. The fiddler, he come from up Church Town. He got up at one end of the barn and tuned his fiddle. He was also master of ceremonies. Sir Roger, he called, and the dancers lined up in their places. "Ready," he shouted. Not a mistake was made. Even Richard Henry remembered his turns. Loud clapping followed, and the fiddler was given a quart jug of beer instead of a pint. As the evening proceeded, the barn got hotter and the dancing more furious. "Halt," shouted the fiddler, "time for a change," and everybody sank in their seats. "I'm boiling. Some hot, isn't it?" said Mother. Well, Father and most of the men had now took off their collars, coats and waistcoats. "I'll tie a piece of string to the sleeves of my coat," said Father, "so I shall know and again. Last year I went home with somebody else's." "Games," cried the young people. "We want games." "All right," shouted the MC, "we'll have jumping over the candle." A candle was placed on the floor in the centre of the room, and all the young ladies had to jump over it in turn. If they blew out the candle in doing this, the result would be they wouldn't be married for all the following year. They lined up in a row, and at a given signal they ran and they jumped over the candle. All went well until one young lady, whom several of the lads wanted to take home after the dance, refused to jump. Well, the game was held up until she could be persuaded to try her luck. Twice she turned back and wouldn't jump. The third time, she went flying over the candle with 2 or 3 inches to spare. This caused loud cheering, and she was soon booked up for the next dance. Then they played forfeits. And after that, beer was again passed around to the men and lemonade to the ladies. Singing followed the games and was much enjoyed, for there were many there that had good voices. The favourite song, "The Farmer's Boy," with all joining in the chorus, went well. All lang syne finished the evening's entertainment, and they all rushed for their hats and coats. Father had to carry his because he couldn't unfasten the string that he tied the sleeves up with. "I shan't be able to climb in bed tonight, I'm that sore," said Mother, but 'twas some handsome evening. Come along. Well, Richard Henry had to lead Father, for he fell down twice. And all the way home he kept singing, good night, ladies, we're going to leave you now." Well, I'm going to leave them. I'm going to have a cup of tea a minute because I'm jacking.